She thought she'd bought an empty, forgotten farm, but one night, a strange sound shattered the silence. Hooves, pounding in the dark. What she discovered next would change her life forever. When Emma decided to leave the city, she knew her life needed a change. The crowded streets, the constant noise, and the endless rush had left her feeling tired and empty. She wanted a place where she could breathe, where the world felt slower and simpler. That is why she bought the small farm in the mountains, a property long forgotten and quiet. The first time she arrived, she felt a mix of excitement and uncertainty. The house was old and the paint was peeling, but she saw the potential in every corner. Rolling fields stretched out around her, and trees lined the edges like silent guardians. Birds called from the branches and a soft wind moved through the grass. It was peaceful, more peaceful than she had imagined. Even as she explored the farmhouse and the surrounding land, a quiet thought lingered in her mind. The farm seemed too still, as if it was waiting for something. The empty barns and overgrown paths held secrets she could not yet see. For now, she pushed the thought aside. Tomorrow, she would begin settling in, and the farm would finally feel like home. The first night in the farmhouse was quiet in a way Emma had never experienced. The city had always been loud, full of cars and voices, but here, the only sounds were the wind through the trees and the occasional rustle of small animals. She unpacked her things and made herself comfortable, feeling a sense of calm settle over her. As the darkness grew deeper, she sat by the window and looked out at the fields. The moon cast a pale light over the land, and the farmhouse seemed smaller and more fragile than she had imagined. Then she heard it, a soft, distant sound at first, almost like footsteps, but not human. Her heart skipped. She listened more closely and realized it was the sound of hooves striking the earth. Slow at first, then louder, moving across the yard. She pressed her hands to her chest, unsure if she should investigate or stay inside. The sound stopped as suddenly as it had started. She strained her eyes, but all she could see were the shadows of the trees and the faint outline of the barn. Emma told herself it was just her imagination or an animal wandering nearby, yet a shiver ran down her spine. Something was out there, waiting, just beyond the darkness. The next morning, Emma woke with a mixture of excitement and unease. She needed to explore the farm, to understand the land she now called hers. The sun was just rising, casting a golden glow over the fields, and a thin layer of mist clung to the grass. Every corner of the property seemed to hold a story, if only she could discover it. She started with the barn. The doors were heavy and worn, but they opened with a groan that echoed through the empty yard. Inside, the smell of old hay and dust filled her senses. Sunlight streamed through cracks in the wood, illuminating patches of the floor and forgotten tools leaning against the walls. It seemed deserted, but there was something about the space that felt alive. As she moved around the yard, she noticed tracks in the mud. At first, she thought they were deer, but the prints were enormous, much larger than any deer she had ever seen. They led away from the barn toward the back of the property, where thick trees and overgrown paths hid something just out of view. Curiosity pushed her forward. She followed the tracks slowly, stepping carefully over roots and fallen branches. The forested area seemed quieter than the open fields, as if holding its breath. The deeper she went, the more she felt she was not alone. Soft sounds carried through the air, snorts, the rustle of hooves, and the distant shaking of leaves. Emma paused to catch her breath, feeling a mixture of fear and wonder. The tracks led somewhere, but where? The forest held its secrets tightly, and she had the growing sense that something incredible waited just beyond the trees. Something she was meant to find. Emma followed the tracks deeper into the overgrown area behind the barn. The trees thickened, and sunlight barely reached the ground. Every step made her heart beat faster. She could hear soft, uneven noises ahead, something breathing, moving, alive. Her curiosity overpowered her fear. After a few minutes, she stumbled over a fallen log and landed near a cluster of thick vines. Pushing them aside, she froze. Behind the greenery was a structure she had never noticed from the yard. It was a stable, partially hidden and worn with age. The wood was gray and cracked, but the roof was mostly intact. From somewhere inside came the sound of soft snorts and the shuffle of hooves. Her hands trembled as she pushed open the creaking door. Dust swirled in the sunlight that streamed through the cracks. At first, she saw only shadows. Then, two massive shapes stepped into the light. Horses. Not ordinary horses, these were enormous, taller and stronger than any she had seen. Their coats shone even in the dim light, and their eyes held intelligence and calm, watching her as closely as she watched them. Emma could hardly believe what she saw. She took a cautious step forward, and one of the horses moved closer, nostrils flaring, sniffing her hand. The other stayed back, but did not appear afraid. She felt a mix of awe and relief, realizing that these animals had been here for years, living quietly in this hidden stable. For the first time, she understood why the farm had felt alive despite its emptiness. These horses were its secret heart, and she had just found it. A bond, unspoken and immediate, formed in that quiet, sunlit stable. Over the next few days, Emma returned to the hidden stable as often as she could. Each visit was a small adventure, filled with wonder and careful observation. She learned to move slowly, to speak softly, and to let the horses decide how close they wanted her to be. At first, they kept their distance, watching her from the corners of the stable, ears twitching and nostrils flaring. She started with simple tasks, sweeping the floor, removing broken boards, and laying fresh hay. The horses watched her work, seemingly judging each movement, yet never with hostility. Gradually, Emma offered them food. Carrots and apples became her way of introducing herself. The larger of the two stepped closer, sniffed her hand, and gently nibbled at a carrot. The smaller horse, more cautious, stayed back but followed her movements with careful eyes. As days passed, trust grew. The horses began to accept her presence, allowing her to stroke their soft coats and brush away dust. Their massive size was impressive, but their gentle nature surprised her. She learned their habits, the way they moved, and the subtle sounds they made. At night, she could hear them calling to each other, their low neighs echoing through the stable, a reminder that she was no longer alone. The bond went beyond care. It became a connection. When Emma spoke softly, the horses listened. When she paused to breathe or reflect, they stood patiently beside her. She felt a quiet joy, one she had never known in the city. The farm was no longer empty. Its heart beat in the rhythm of hooves and soft snorts, in the warmth of animal trust. Emma realized she had found not only companionship but also a sense of purpose. Caring for the horses demanded patience and attention, but it gave back far more. In their presence, her fears faded, replaced by a growing courage. She felt ready for whatever the farm might hold next, confident that together they could face it. As Emma settled into life on the farm, she quickly realized that caring for the horses and maintaining the property was far more difficult than she had imagined. The hidden stable needed repairs, the fences around the fields were broken in places, and supplies were scarce. Every morning began with chores that left her exhausted, and every evening brought a quiet worry about whether she was doing enough. The weather added its own challenges. Storms swept through the mountains, bringing wind and heavy rain that threatened to damage the old barn and make the trails treacherous. On one particularly cold night, Emma had to guide the horses through muddy paths to shelter them safely. Their massive size made the task physically demanding, but she refused to leave them in danger. The neighbors were another source of tension. Some warned her that the farm had a bad reputation, calling it haunted or cursed. They questioned why she bothered with such a lonely, difficult place. Emma felt a sting of doubt, wondering if she had made a mistake in leaving the city behind. Still, she pushed these voices aside, determined to protect the animals and her dream of a quiet life. Strain on her body and mind began to build. Wounds from minor accidents, aching muscles, and sleepless nights became routine. Yet the horses provided strength in return. Their trust reminded her why she had come to this place. Every soft nuzzle, every trusting glance, motivated her to keep going. One morning, she noticed unusual signs near the edge of the forest, broken branches and footprints she did not recognize. Something or someone had been near the horses. Fear gripped her. She realized that not everyone respected the animals or the farm. A poacher, a trespasser, or worse could appear at any time. Emma understood that protecting the horses would require more than care. It would require courage, quick thinking, and sometimes a willingness to face dangers she had never imagined. For the first time, she recognized the stakes clearly. These were not just animals to care for, they were her responsibility, and their safety depended entirely on her. The farm, once quiet and empty, was now alive with challenges that tested every part of her strength and resolve. One late afternoon, Emma was checking the fences near the forest edge when she noticed something strange. The hoofprints she had followed weeks ago were joined by others smaller, sharper, and clearly made by humans. Her stomach tightened. Someone had been near the horses without her knowing. That evening, she heard voices in the distance, faint but unmistakable. They spoke of the horses, of their size and value. Emma's heart raced. She realized that the hidden stable, her secret sanctuary, was no longer safe. Someone wanted the horses, and she could not let them be taken. Over the next few days, she became increasingly vigilant. She repaired old fences, cleared paths so she could move quickly, and stayed near the stable as much as possible. The horses sensed her worry and remained close, their presence a comfort and a warning. One night, a shadow appeared near the barn. Emma held her breath as she watched the figure move silently through the yard. She could not see clearly, but she knew the intruder intended to capture the horses. Fear threatened to paralyze her, yet she refused to retreat. She spent hours planning, considering every possible way to protect the animals. She remembered lessons from her time in the city: quick thinking, careful observation, and the importance of acting decisively. The farm was no longer just her home, it was a fortress. The horses depended on her, and she would not fail them. As darkness fell, Emma stood at the edge of the stable, listening to the soft sounds of hooves inside. She felt a surge of determination. Whatever danger approached, she would meet it with courage. The peaceful farm she had imagined was gone, replaced by a place where bravery and vigilance were now part of daily life. The storm had arrived without warning, wind rattling the farmhouse windows and rain pounding the roof. Emma stood in the stable doorway, listening to the distant rumble of thunder. The horses shifted nervously behind her, their eyes wide with unease. She had sensed the danger all day, and now the storm seemed to mask something else: footsteps approaching through the mud and brush. Suddenly, a shadow emerged from the darkness. A man, tall and determined, was moving quickly toward the stable. Emma's heart pounded, but fear did not paralyze her. She remembered the trust she had built with the horses and the quiet courage they inspired in her. "Stay back!" she shouted, stepping between the man and the horses. He hesitated, underestimating the resolve in her voice. The larger horse stepped forward, ears pinned and hooves stamping the ground, a low growl rumbling from its chest. The smaller horse mirrored the action, flaring nostrils and stomping. The intruder faltered, realizing these were no ordinary animals. Emma seized the moment. She grabbed a sturdy lantern and waved it, shouting for the man to leave. Rain soaked her through, but she did not back down. The horses, sensing her determination, pressed closer to her side, their sheer presence amplifying her warning. The man, unsure and unwilling to confront the massive animals, finally turned and fled into the storm. Emma stayed at the stable door, her chest heaving, watching until the darkness swallowed him completely. After the intruder was gone, Emma sank to the ground beside the horses, relief flooding her. She ran her hands along their wet, shivering coats, speaking softly. They nudged her, trusting and calm once more. The storm raged on outside, but inside the stable, warmth and safety returned. In that moment, Emma understood something vital. Courage was not the absence of fear, it was acting despite it. She had protected the horses, the heart of her new life, and they had protected her in return. The bond between them had deepened, stronger than ever, sealed by the trials of that stormy night. The days after the storm were calm and bright. The sun returned, warming the fields and drying the mud that had made the trails treacherous. Emma moved through the farm with a sense of peace she had never felt before. The hidden stable was secure, the fences repaired, and the horses healthy and calm. Life on the farm felt steady for the first time. Neighbors began to notice the change. Some came cautiously to see the horses, amazed by their size and gentle nature. Emma welcomed them, sharing her story of discovery and trust. The farm, once quiet and forgotten, was now alive with purpose and respect. Emma spent her mornings feeding the horses and tending to the land, her evenings walking the fields and listening to the soft calls of the animals. She felt a deep connection to the farm, to the animals, and to the life she had built. Every sound, every rustle in the trees reminded her that she was not alone. The bond she shared with the horses had grown stronger than she had imagined. Their trust and companionship brought her joy and courage, and in return, she gave them safety and care. She understood that the farm was more than a property. It was a home where love and loyalty could flourish. As the sun set over the mountains, Emma stood by the stable, watching the horses graze in the fading light. The farm was no longer empty. It was a place of life, hope, and beginnings. And in that quiet moment, she knew she had found exactly what she had been looking for: a home, a family, and a future filled with possibilities. Emma often sat in the quiet of the stable long after her chores were done, listening to the gentle snorts and shifting hooves of the horses. In those moments, she reflected on how much had changed since the day she first arrived at the farm. What had seemed empty and abandoned was, in truth, full of life and waiting for someone to care. She had discovered not only the hidden stable but also a part of herself she had not known existed. The farm had tested her in ways the city never could. Long nights of work, storms that threatened to undo all her efforts, and the fear of losing the horses had pushed her to be stronger, braver, and more patient than she had ever thought possible. The challenges had been real and often exhausting, but they had also brought her clarity. She understood now that life's greatest rewards often came after struggle, and that trust once earned could create bonds deeper than words could describe. The horses had become more than animals to her. They were companions, teachers, and friends. Through them, she learned to read patience in silence, courage in action, and joy in simple moments. Every morning she watched them move through the fields or nuzzle each other in the stable. She felt a profound sense of connection. It reminded her that love and care could heal not only what was broken in the world, but also what was hidden inside herself. Looking toward the mountains at sunset, Emma felt hope swell within her. The farm, once quiet and still, was alive with sound, movement, and life. She realized that beginnings could come at any time, often in unexpected ways, and that the courage to embrace them could open doors to unimaginable discoveries. In the soft glow of the evening, surrounded by her trusted companions, Emma smiled. She had found her place, her purpose, and her family. The farm was no longer simply land and buildings, it was a home built on trust, bravery, and love. And she knew, without doubt, that the bond she shared with the horses would carry her through every challenge yet to come.